All right, so the nuclear security summit's ended here in Washington, D.C., but that doesn't mean that the political environment has gotten any quieter. Quite the opposite. It got back down to partisan bickering as financial regulation took center stage today. So lawmakers are expected to begin debate on a revamp of financial regulation in less than 2 weeks. And everybody claims to want Wall Street to pay. They just have different ways of going about it, which makes most people believe that at the end of the day, Wall Street's still going to win no matter what, and the American people will probably end up losing out. And then today also, Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke testified on Capitol Hill and approached the word recovery very cautiously. So what do we see in America's financial future? Here to discuss it with me, I have Christian Dorsey, the Director of External and Governmental Affairs at the Economic Policy Institute, and Anthony Randazzo from Reason Magazine. I want to thank you both for being here. Let's start with Bernanke first, get the simple stuff out of the way, right? Recovery. In many ways, he said that recovery, it's getting there. He looked at it in a positive light, but in a very cautious manner. So what do we make of his statements?
Well, he's just recognizing that we have a huge, huge hole. So even small signs of recovery still leave you clearly seeing a huge mountain to climb. And he rightfully acknowledges that the labor market still is hurting severely. You've got 8.5 million people that you need to get back to work just to get back to where you were at the beginning of the recession. And by no means can we just declare that the recovery has no impediments in its path. It's still pretty fledgling. So he acknowledged that today.
And I think you're going to find very few people that are extremely bullish about the market and think that there are no problems left anymore. And even more to the point, I really doubt that Bernanke wants to be wrong again. I mean, he was dead wrong the past several years, and he does not want to come out and say that recovery is well on its way and then we'll wind up in a double dip.
Well, of course, and nobody wants to take that chance at this point, right? You're going to have a lot of fingers pointed at you, a lot of angry people. But now he also spoke about the debt and our need to tackle this because this is such an issue. But is there really the political will to tackle the debt? I mean, is there a way to tackle the debt while we need more, while some people would say we need more government spending, need more programs, need more money fueled into the economy?
Well, it's interesting that the headline is he wants to do something to tackle the debt. He also said first, we realize that while the economy is still struggling, we're going to have to run deficits. It's just a fact of life. If a person loses their job, you can't expect that they're going to be able to balance their budget. They're probably going to run a deficit for a while. The country is no different. But long term, and this is an issue that politicians have been poor performers at for a long time, we've got structural deficit issues. And all Congress likes to do is give everybody tax cuts. And looking forward, people want to say that we've got to cut spending, but we're also going to have to raise revenues. And I don't trust Congress to do that responsibly.
I think that there isn't the right political will right now. I really don't think that we need the government spending to push us into the recovery that we want, that we're doing, that's being put in place right now. The jobs bill, talking about more and more stimulus, and in particular the way that the Federal Reserve and Bernanke is running interest rates right now, I think are hurting long-term prospects for recovery, and it's going to make it harder to deal with the debt. I would disagree that that the United States is in a position where people it's like we've lost our job and we need to keep spending to get ourselves into recovery. I think that's just going to make it more untenable to deal with it long term.
Well, you've got to spend. There's no other way around it. You've got 8.5 million people unemployed, and you've got the biggest government spending program in modern times, the Recovery Act, which has created somewhere around the neighborhood of 2.5 million jobs. Clearly, government's the answer to move us out of the jobs hole.
The problem is when those government programs wind up making unemployment worse. And so we talk about extending unemployment benefits, which is a huge topic right now. And all economic data points to is that the further you extend unemployment benefits, the longer people are going to take to try and find a job. Why would you need to look for a job if you've got another 16 to 26 weeks of unemployment checks coming to you? And that's why we have seen from the beginning of this recession, where people were out of work about 10 or so months, and now it's about 19 months of people being out of work. That's because of the unemployment benefits continuing to be extended. It went from about 26 months of unemployment benefits to 76.
With all due respect, with all due respect, I mean, you've got people who are long-term unemployed because there are no jobs to be had. There are over 5 job openings. I'm sorry, over 5 job seekers for every job opening. So that's why people are long-term unemployed. And you can't tell me that someone wouldn't rather have their high-wage job than the $350 they get per week from unemployment insurance.
All right, guys, we got to move on to another point. I love that you're disagreeing here, and I think it's fair to say there definitely are some people in this country that take advantage of unemployment benefits, but I definitely think that at this point in time, the majority of them are not sitting back and just loving life because they can't, you know, put money on or put food on the table at night. But I wanted to get to financial regulation. Let's bring this all back to Wall Street. They're the ones that started this whole mess. And let's ask here, it seems like this is going to be the next battle. Is this going to turn into the next healthcare battle? It looks like all bipartisanship could be dead at this point.
Well, I don't know if bipartisanship has ever existed, at least for this president. And I think your concerns about this looking like health care are well-founded. If America can't get together on a bipartisan basis to acknowledge that lack of accountability for Wall Street has led us to the precipice of perhaps another Great Depression. If we can't get together on that, then I don't have hopes that we can get together on anything. And that you have Republicans on the Hill who want to resist even a very modest milquetoast attempt by Senator Dodd to rein in Wall Street and banking and capital markets. If they can't go along with that, then I'm ultimately chagrined about what we can do moving forward.
Well, this is what I see here, though, is everybody is pointing fingers at Wall Street. Everyone's blaming Wall Street. But you hear, from the Republican side that if we do pass financial regulation, then it's going to lead to more Wall Street bailouts, whereas the Democrats are arguing that we need the financial regulation in order to keep Wall Street at and which one is it? Can somebody explain it to me?
Well, I would agree. If there's any one particular issue that there should be bipartisanship on, it should be this one issue. And the Republican attitude basically is the same as health care. They're just not going to play ball in any case, and they're going to make it like health care. They're not willing to compromise. But I think that Christopher Dodd and Barney Frank aren't willing to compromise either, and they're not willing to see that actually this bill is going to create perpetual bailouts. And here's how. It's actually putting together a fund. $50 billion fund of money. So if a major, if a Lehman Brothers goes down, that money can be used to pay all of their short-term creditors, which is the major concern with the big company going down. So if you're lending money to these big institutions, you know that if they go down, you get bailed out. That's not eliminating some of those key problems that brought us here in the first place. And so I think that if there really is going to be bipartisanship, the Republicans do need to come a step, but I think that the Democrats need to come another step and realize that the current structures that was passed out of the House and that Dodd's trying to pass in the Senate really do not cut mustard in terms of eliminating too big to fail once and for all.
And I might agree with that in large part. The one difference that this bill makes is it's not going to wind down those big institutions on the taxpayer's dime. Those big financial institutions are going to pay into that $50 billion fund, so it's not going to be you and me who bails them out. It's going to be they who bail themselves out. Is that perfect? Absolutely not, and I completely agree, but at least I won't foot the bill next time.
Also I want to talk about, I know you were on the Hill today, but in another hearing, the executive of J.P. Morgan and Chase was mobbed when he said, I will welcome questions, and basically at the end of the hearing, he was mobbed by people, and it seems like there's a lot of populist anger. So what do the lawmakers have to do right now to get on the side of the people and to convince them that we really are working for you, when in reality they probably all are just working for Wall Street?
I mean, I wouldn't say that every lawmaker up there is working for Wall Street. There certainly are some that have been bought off.
There are some good ones.
Yeah, well, but I do think it's a little bit dangerous to try and sit here and say that Washington needs, or our lawmakers need to figure out how to make us happy as people and quell populist anger, because that leads to putting in place things like what's in the Dodd bill, which is the executive compensation limits, which really don't do anything much at all. It's really a token gesture that's just going to be annoying for companies, and it's going to add a lot of compliance costs to them and maybe create a few problems, but it doesn't change anything really in the way that executives are going to get paid, and it's like a populist nod. That's not really going to be effective. So I think that what Washington can really do to say that we're on the side of the people is actually have the Democrats and Republicans both come one step each and put together something that really does end too big to fail, that doesn't put taxpayers at risk in the future, and that, broadly speaking, puts us on a stable foundation for a financial sector.
All right, I want to thank you both for being here. We will see in the upcoming weeks, actually it's already starting now, though the debate technically doesn't start for about another 2 weeks, on financial regulation, whether the parties will come together on perhaps one of the biggest issues that they should agree on.